Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, this afternoon. My name is Leslie Albritton. I am the project coordinator and managing attorney for Legal Aid of North Carolina's Disaster Relief Project. I know this is sort of a weird and difficult time for all of us. I'm coming to you today from my home office, which is also my master bedroom. And I have three kids at home right now who are homeschooling. So I've hung a sign on the door that says, I'm on the air and do not disturb, which is always a great invitation for them to interrupt me. So in spite of that, we're going to try to keep things as informative and professional as possible. Um, it seems odd right now to talk about anything other than COVID-19. I know that it's really affecting all of us in the way we live and work and communicate with each other. I lead a pretty boring life, so I'll confess that this is my first Facebook Live post ever. Typically, there's nothing that I do during the day that is all that interesting. So it's a weird format for me, and I know it's strange for a lot of us to be communicating in times where we can't be face to face. So before we start talking about disaster recovery specifically, I want to mention to everybody that our website, and I'll put that address up in a little bit, has a lot of great resources about COVID-19. So it's a website that's really easy to navigate. And one of my fabulous colleagues and team members, Emma Smiley, is actually going to help me out today, and she's going to be fielding the chat box for everybody. So she'll post the website in the chat box as well, and then we'll also post it on my PowerPoint at the end here. But we have many great resources on our website. All you need to do is go to our main page, and it's very easy to find the COVID information. There's a red banner at the top of the screen that says COVID-19 resources, and it's got great information from all of our different practice groups about topics like the new unemployment and leave benefits that are available both at the state and federal level, about education of your children, both their education rights and where to get free meals during this time, and also issues like housing problems that may be related to COVID-19. And our project in particular works with a good number of community and faith-based organizations. So I hope some of those folks are tuned in today. And if you are, I wanted to let you all know that if you are a community or faith-based organization leader and you want more guidance about how to help your community during this time, the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, has just released a website for you. We'll put a link in the chat box, but it's on the CDC's webpage, and it's got information and guidance about how community and faith-based organizations can best help during this pandemic and also keep themselves safe. So that's a good place to look for that information. So, the reality that we're dealing with right now in Eastern North Carolina, which is where I work, and also the area of the state that our disaster relief project primarily focuses on, is that we're actually struggling right now with 4 disasters that have happened in pretty rapid succession. So, Hurricane Matthew hit in 2016, and there are many people in our state who still are not fully recovered from that storm. And then in less than 2 years, in 2018, we had Hurricane Florence, and those impacts were felt over 34 counties in our state. And last year we had Dorian, and although Dorian was a smaller storm in terms of its geographical impact, it certainly was not small in terms of the damage that it wrought in Oak Croak and areas in the Outer Banks and Maitland, Hyde, and Dare counties. And now we have COVID to contend with, which is a disaster that is unlike any that I've experienced. I think any of us have experienced in our lifetime, and it's impacting our entire nation. And the significance of this is, of course, that even though all these impacts are felt in slightly different geographical areas, and we know that nationwide there are different storms and wildfires and flooding events that have impacted different states in our country, resources are not infinite. And so when we have all of these events in rapid succession, we know here at Legal Aid that resources get stretched thin and recovery becomes more difficult. There are only so many dollars that the federal and state governments have to put towards recovery. And there are only so many people who can, for volunteer organizations who can help folks to rebuild, and they have a limited number of donations that they can put towards each natural disaster. So these impacts really add up, and they just compound the challenge. So, of course, we also know that this current situation in COVID-19 is especially difficult for people who have been impacted by a natural disaster of some kind in several ways. It's really hard to social distance if you've lost your home and you're doubled or tripled up with family members, or if you're living in a trailer of some kind, either a FEMA trailer or some other kind of travel trailer. And then to top it all off, we know that the construction that was going on that was helping people finally get their homes repaired has kind of come to a standstill for the time being. And that building's not going on because it's not safe for volunteers and for contractors to be out in close proximity and working together right now. So we understand the frustration, and we know that that affects people emotionally, and it takes a toll on the recovery process in general. And it's also, frankly, taken a toll on the work that our project does. And that's why we've started to really think about what we can do to still help people during this time. We are a project that really is built around going out into the communities that we serve. We understand that if you're a survivor of a natural disaster, that it can be really difficult to have the wherewithal to call one more 800 number to get the help that you need, or to drive to a lawyer's office to get assistance. So our whole project has been built around the idea of going out into the communities that we serve and working with our community partners to get to survivors. And we can't do that right now, quite frankly. So we're trying new ways to get information to people. So this broadcast and this series of Facebook presentations and Zoom meetings that we're going to be doing in the next several weeks is kind of an experience so that we can reach people and continue to fulfill our mission. And if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, what I really want you to know is that there are still legal issues with which we can help you right now. And there are things we can do while the hammers are not falling to help you get in a better position to recover when all these resources that we're going to talk about today and in the next few weeks become available. So we are still open for business. We are still working full time, and we still are able to take on your cases. So please keep that in mind. I've put together a little agenda for today. Since you can't see me, I thought it would be helpful for you to know what we're going to talk about and where we're going. Also, I'm a person who really likes agendas, and I'm again new to Facebook Live, so I couldn't figure out how to share this fancy PowerPoint that I put together and show you what I look like, so that you can put a person with a voice. So one of our PR people and I decided that it would be helpful for you to see a picture of me. So right down there in the corner, you can see that I am pictured with my good friend Reese Witherspoon, and this is, of course, our Legally Blonde look. So in the interest of and recognition of the fact that we're on Facebook, this is one of my old profile pictures. This is not how I dress when I go to court, but Facebook is supposed to be informal. So there you go. Before we get started in the substance of this talk, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping matters for everybody. We at our project really like to get feedback so that we can do the best job possible and give people the best information possible. So we have a short survey monkey that we've prepared for today, and we're going to place the link to that in our chat box. It is a quick and easy survey. It will take you, I would say, under 5 minutes. I think there may be 5 questions, one of which is a open-ended question if you choose to answer it. I think even if you do that open-ended question, it's still going to take you under 5 minutes. And if you choose to answer that question, I'd like you to do 3 things for me. If you can tell us one thing that you think we did well, and one thing on which we can improve. And then also, if something occurs to you that you'd like to learn more about, please let us know what other topics we can cover in these sessions going forward. As I said, we've got 5 sessions planned already, including this one, but there's no reason we have to stop there. So if we don't cover something that you're interested in, I'm going to list all of the upcoming sessions at the end of this so you'll know what they are. And if there's something that seems to be missing, please let us know and we'll try to address that in another session. And then the next point is, please type your questions in the chat box. As I mentioned, one of my team members is going to be assisting me today, and she'll be monitoring that chat box because I can't see it since I'm sharing my full screen with you. And she's going to try to answer those questions for you as we go. And then if there are questions that she doesn't get to or that seem good for me to answer for the whole group, I will try to do that. She'll try to send them to me, and I'll try to answer those for you at the end. So one thing that we always tell people when we do one of these community presentations, whether they're live or they're over some sort of social media platform like this one, is that legal aid is not allowed to give specific legal advice in one of these types of presentations. So what does that mean? That means we are happy to answer your general questions here. So if you have a question about how FEMA makes determinations about what kind of a home is habitable, that is a general question that we can answer. If you have a question about why FEMA denied you benefits based on your specific set of facts, we can't answer that here. And we encourage you, if you do have those kinds of questions, to call our 800 number so that we can do an intake with you, qualify you for our services, and make you a client. And that's really for your benefit so that we can keep your information confidential. And so I guess the admonishment here is the same as the one that I give my children about social media and that we all hear. This presentation, assuming it's not a total bomb, is going to go on our Facebook page for legal aid, and it's going to stay there indefinitely. So don't put anything in that chat box that you don't want your mom or the whole world to know about. And that should be our guiding star, I guess, when you ask questions today. And then finally, as you can see from the agenda here, this is the first of the series that we're going to do. So this program is really intended to be a very broad overview of our project. And in future sessions, we're going to break down some more specific legal issues related to disaster relief. So if it seems like I'm not really getting into the nitty-gritty of things, and I'm just touching on topics, well, you're not wrong. That's exactly what we intend to do today. But stay tuned. We're going to get deep into things in the next few sessions. Right. So who is Legal Aid of North Carolina? I'm going to assume there are some people who tuned in today just because they didn't have anything else to do and this popped up on their news feed. And so you have no idea who we even are. So we are a nonprofit law firm, and we serve all 100 counties in North Carolina. Most of the matters that we handle, and we handle civil, not criminal matters, we're not the public defender's office. Most of those cases will go to one of our local offices. No matter where you are living in North Carolina, there is a legal aid office, a local office that serves your community. And we also have several special projects. The Disaster Relief Project is one of them that deal with specific legal topics. But the good news is that in specific types of cases, the good news for you is that you do not have to figure out how to contact your local office or figure out which project relates to your legal issue. We have a centralized screening process through what we call our helpline, and that's the 800 number that I'm going to share at the end of this presentation, and that hopefully will appear in our chat box magically. And if you call that number and you go through our helpline, the screeners and the attorneys there will talk to you. They'll give you some advice about your legal issue, and they will get you to the appropriate office or project to handle your case. So you don't have to do any of that on your own. We do have you do have to qualify for our services. We like to say that you cannot beat our prices because we are a free. Our legal services are free to people who qualify, but you do have to qualify. So we have some income and eligibility requirements. Those can be found on our website, and of course, if you call for a screening, you'll know what those are. Generally, we tend to serve with many, or with a few notable exceptions, folks who are within 187.5% of the federal poverty guidelines. However, there are exceptions to that rule, so it's always best to give us a call if you think you might qualify and you need our help. And another piece of good news is that we try to do programs like these that are just for community education, that are available to everyone, regardless of whether you would qualify for our direct legal representation. And we also, again, have a fantastic website that anyone can go to and find legal information. Listed here on this slide are just a few of the types of cases that legal aid handles, including housing cases, which would include landlord-tenant problems, mortgage foreclosure if you're a homeowner. We also handle domestic violence cases for victims of domestic violence. We have a large consumer advocacy program that handles things like predatory lending schemes, contractor fraud, bankruptcies, and we also deal with public benefits, expunctions, especially for people who are trying to get back into the workforce, and education cases. And there are many other types of legal matters. I can't cover them all here. We have, in my opinion, some of the best attorneys and support staff around, all of whom are very dedicated to helping the citizens of North Carolina. So I encourage you to give us a call. Now, Legal Aid's Disaster Relief Project is intended to help clients who are impacted by any type of disaster that occurs in North Carolina. Right now, we are primarily serving survivors of Hurricanes Matthew, Florence, and Dorian. In order to do that work, we partner with federal, state, and local agencies to provide the best assistance possible to our clients. We will work with everyone from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or the dreaded FEMA as they're known, to state emergency management, local long-term recovery groups, and also community groups to help get our clients the best outcomes possible. And I want to make the point that I know that, again, COVID-19 response is vital right now in our state, and our firm is handling cases related to that. Today, we're going to focus primarily on the assistance that our project has provided and continues to provide for survivors of and those recovering from Hurricane Florence primarily. We're doing that work through a generous grant from Legal Services Corporation. The main mission of our project, and specifically of the work we're doing under the grant for Hurricane Florence survivors, is that we want to assist with an equitable recovery across Eastern North Carolina. Now, what does equitable mean? Equitable does not necessarily mean equal. Equitable means a fair or just recovery. So we understand that natural disasters don't discriminate in terms of who they impact. And COVID, of course, is a good example of that, as we have seen people from all walks of life and all over the world falling sick of COVID-19. However, recovery, whether it's from a pandemic or from a natural disaster like Hurricane Florence, does look different depending on your circumstances. And it's not always equal. So in order to make it fair, you can't necessarily treat everyone the same. So our approach to disaster recovery takes into account that not all people had the same resources to begin with or when they were impacted by a disaster, nor do they have the same resources available to them during the recovery process. And we try to level that playing field and give everybody the best access that we can to ensure a good and equitable recovery for our clients. I'd like to give you a few, whoa, too early. Everybody got a preview there. I'd like to give you a few specific, before we get to my next slide, a few specific examples of types of cases that our project can help with and has been helping with, and the types of cases that we've handled so far. So some good examples are the FEMA cases that we have been working on that are just wrapping up now. We have handled numerous cases for folks in Eastern North Carolina involving both FEMA appeals and reconsiderations. And some of the results we've gotten from those cases include getting people money from FEMA when they were initially denied. Denials may occur because an applicant cannot show that they were an owner occupier of the property for which they're trying to recover funds from FEMA. And we have helped people by showing ownership in alternative ways other than just presenting a deed to the property. And so we've been able to get people recovery from FEMA where initially they got none. And then we've also been able to get people more money from FEMA when they did get maybe some money, but it wasn't what they thought they were entitled to. FEMA funds typically are not designed to put a person back where they were pre-natural disaster. They are intended to make the homes habitable again and free from disaster-related hazards. And so by showing FEMA that the initial award was not sufficient to do that, we've had some success in getting people additional funds from FEMA. It's a frustrating reality of being a disaster relief attorney to know that it's not an area of practice where you can always just go into court and make a really great argument and show everybody show the judge what the law is and get the result that your client should get. And sometimes even when it is a case that you may want to take to court, that's not the quickest road to recovery for our clients. So, we do, again, work very closely with community partners and help our clients to find resources that they need in order to get the things that they need to make a recovery, even when it's not necessarily a legal solution. We have some social workers who are wonderful at helping us do that, and we've been able to get new furniture for people and repairs to their homes and find alternative housing for people who are in not the best, most livable circumstances with when they were renters in particular. And this is all done in cooperation with other volunteer organizations and community partners who really have those resources. And our role in that is just to help our clients access them, again, without just giving them a phone number to call. We have defended numerous summary ejectment cases, which are evictions. related to Hurricane Florence, and we are still continuing to work on cases involving contractor fraud. It's an unfortunate reality that in the wake of a disaster, there are frequently people who want to make a quick buck by taking advantage of people, and it's very easy to think that you would not be taken in by a situation like that. But we understand that after you've lost everything that you own, perhaps, and you don't have a roof on your house, you're not quite thinking clearly, and your brain's functioning in a different way. And contractors are hard to come by, and so it can be difficult to get someone to make a fix. And your people find themselves in a situation where they're giving folks money up front, and then the worker, the contractor will disappear, taking their money with them, and they never get any repairs. Excuse my misspelling of Matthew there. I think that we've got an extra T. I want to talk briefly to folks about the phases of recovery. And when I say phases of recovery, I mean the phases of recovery in terms of people's legal needs after a natural disaster. I think it's important to show this graph, which I'm not going to read through in detail, because it illustrates that people have lots and lots of issues after they're impacted by a natural disaster that they may not even realize are legal issues, or problems with which an attorney may be able to help. And a good example of this can be found in the short-term recovery column. You see replacement of documents. It is not uncommon for people to be evacuated from their homes in a manner where they don't have time to take all of their important documentation with them. And so you wouldn't think, when you don't have your ID or your driver's license or your social security card or your important custody papers, that that's something that an attorney can help with. But they can, and it's a good example of a problem that with which our attorneys can help. And so when folks call that 800 number and we screen them for eligibility and we know they're a survivor of a natural disaster, we also try to ask enough questions to know whether or not they have an issue that they don't even know is something that we might handle. So let's talk about where we are now in terms of recovery from Florence. And you'll see that medium-term recovery looks like 1 to 6 months after an event typically, and long-term recovery means 6 months to years after an event. And I do mean years. And Hurricane Matthew is a perfect example of that. We are almost 4 years out from that event, and we are still recovering in Eastern North Carolina. And we are a long way away from where we need to be, quite frankly, to get things back to where they were before that storm. But because of the slow pace of recovery, we would expect to see people coming into our office exclusively having issues that fall within the 6 months to years after an event, even in their recovery from Hurricane Florence, which happened in 2018. But because the pace is so slow, we're actually somewhere in between that green and pink area, in between the midterm and long-term issues. Again, there are still lots of people coming to see us about contractor scams or disputes. And most likely that's because there have been no contractors to find. So, people are just showing up now, realizing that that contractor that they paid a year ago is actually not going to show up and do the work, no matter what they say. Same for clearing property titles. Where, for the most part, aside from working on those issues with, in order to get people money from volunteer and charitable organizations, we are not even at the point yet where the long-term recovery funds are on the ground. And I'm going to talk about that for just a minute here. The funds that everybody waits for, especially if you do not have private insurance or you haven't qualified for an SBA loan, are what we call the CDBGDR funds. And those are Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. That is money that comes from housing and urban development, and it is the money that the federal government deploys that is intended to put people back as close as possible to where they were before they were impacted by a storm like Florence. We know that for most folks, especially if you lost everything, things are never going to be quite the same, but those are the funds that will at least get your house rebuilt, back to where it was, and maybe a new home in certain circumstances. So the funds, those funds come from a congressional appropriation. So Congress has to say, we think that this amount of money should be put towards recovery for this storm, and this amount's going to go to North Carolina, this amount's going to go to South Carolina. Those appropriations, there were two of them, were made in late 2018, early 2019 for Florence. And yet, none of that money has been sent by the state of North Carolina. And it is important to note that that is not due to a delay on the state's part. Again, those funds are meant by design to be the last funds that come available for recovery. So they're supposed to come along after FEMA is done, after SBA loans are made, after the volunteer organizations and the charitable organizations have pretty much helped the people who they're going to help, and after folks have gotten whatever insurance dollars they are entitled to. So they are by design the very last pot that becomes available. And then beyond that, because it's federal dollars, there are a lot of regulations and there's a lot of red tape that goes into getting those funds on the ground. So the state had been waiting for the guidance basically to be written about those funds. And now that that has happened, the next step was, and this has already occurred, for the state to write its action plan. The state has to write a detailed plan that tells housing and urban development how those dollars are going to be spent and why it's appropriate to spend it in that way. Once those are written, there's a comment period for just about any block grant money that HUD deploys. The communities that are impacted get to comment on that. And so our organization put together some comments, and the plan, the proposed plan, and all the comments that the state has collected have to go back up to housing and urban development, and they review. Housing and urban development reviews all of that and either approves it or tells the state, we think that there are changes that need to be made. This is what you need to work on. So as you can imagine, that can be a very lengthy process. And once that is all done, then the application process begins. That is an 8-step process that begins at application and runs through the actual construction happening and the recipient of the funds, the homeowner, signing off that the work is satisfactory. So it's a very, very long process. The state organization that runs that is known as Rebuild NC. For those of you who have gone through Hurricane Matthew's program, you'll be familiar with Rebuild. And they had told us that that program and the application process would probably start in late spring of this year. However, we don't know, and we haven't heard that, whether or not that process is going to be delayed by COVID-19, because the way the process was supposed to work was that the state was going to have, I believe, recovery centers, and people could go and take all their documents that they need with them, and that they could sit down with somebody who would guide them through that application process in person. So obviously, we don't know when in person is going to be able to happen. Hopefully, the state is coming up with another plan, and we can find out about that in the near future. But it's possible that things will be even further delayed by this pandemic. So, what we learned and we'll talk more about this in one of our later sessions. We're going to go into detail about preparing for the rebuild program and how that program works and some of the pitfalls that we observed from that process during Hurricane Matthew, which is actually still ongoing now. But one of the things that we learned when helping clients is that it's very important for people to be prepared ahead of time for that application process. And that can really, a little bit of preparation can really help you to not get stuck in one of the later steps that takes a long time to resolve. And that's one of the legal issues with which our office can help you. So tune in, I think, the week after next for the rebuild session. We'll go through some of the specific issues you need to consider. Those issues are things like duplication of benefits. So you need to keep your receipts from any money you received from FEMA and from other recovery organizations to show that you spent those properly. Another pitfall is ownership issues. We'll have a whole session on ownership issues and talk about how you can fix some of those problems ahead of time. And the other way we can help you with that is not just through our presentations, but by actually directly representing you. And I will say that, you know, while we're all staying home, now is a very good time to get some of your documents in order. So if you are finished, you know, Marie Kondoing your drawers and organizing your closets and, you know, in my case, throwing out all the plastic Easter eggs because you thought that they were not sparking joy that you now need because you can't go to the store because you're social distancing. So once you're done making all those bad decisions, you can hopefully get some things in order that may help you once that application process starts up. Track down the deed to your house. Find all the receipts from the way you spent your FEMA money. Make sure that you can show some form of ownership for your house. So when you go to sit down for those appointments, you're ready to go. And we're hoping in our project that we'll be able to bring it on some folks to do some community outreach and help people with to manage those issues in person in the coming weeks. And when we get back to normal, that we'll be able to deploy some folks to meet with clients one-on-one and help walk you through that process. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for rebuild, there are all kinds of other legal issues that crop up that we have to deal with in the long-term recovery phase. And those things include people who may be faced with foreclosure because they've been paying a mortgage and paying rent to rent an apartment because they can't live in their home. For those folks, sometimes bankruptcy may be a viable or only option to getting them in a place where they can avoid foreclosure and receive the rebuild funds, because foreclosure can be an impediment to that. Again, people may be dealing with contractor fraud. And just in the last month, FEMA has told, not us because they don't tell us anything directly, that they have indicated that they are finished doing, entertaining or listening to or considering any requests for reconsideration or appeals from Hurricane Florence. So that means they are no longer going to give out any money voluntarily for survivors of Hurricane Florence, which means that they're ready to do the next thing that FEMA does, and that is look at FEMA recoupments. Recoupments are when, and we've already seen a couple of these, recoupments are when FEMA decides that we shouldn't have given you that money that we gave you, either because you weren't really an owner of, or you didn't really occupy that residence that we gave you money to repair, or we don't think you used the funds the way you should have used them. So all of those are issues that we start to see during this mid to long-term recovery phase, and they're all issues with which our organization can help you. So how do you get our help? There are three main ways that you can contact us for an intake. The first is just to call, and all of these apply to any kind of assistance for legal aid. These are not just numbers for the Disaster Relief Project. They are numbers for any legal issue you may have with which we can help. So keep that in mind. The first number is to our helpline, and that number is 1-866-219-5262. Or if you're over the age of 60, you can call our senior helpline at 1-877-579-7562. And then there's also the option to apply online for our services. This is really easy to do at our website, which is listed there, www.legalaidnc.org. And you can't miss it. If you go to our main page, you'll see a blue button in the top left-hand corner that says apply online. You just click that. You will fill out the application form, and someone will call you back. So you don't have to, if you're not a person who likes to call in directly and maybe sit on hold for a minute, you can wait for somebody to call you and go on about your business. And I want everyone to know that when you go through that application process, you should be prepared that we do ask you for some information about yourself, including your income information, some basic information about your date of birth, and not all, but the last four digits of your social security number. So if you fill out that online application and someone calls you back asking for personal information, it's not a scam. It's what we need in order to qualify you for our services. And everything you tell us, including that screening information, is always kept confidential. Let's talk about our upcoming events in our series. So we have, again, 4 more events in our series, and for the next 4, we're going to simulcast them over Facebook Live, and we're also going to conduct them as Zoom meetings. So if the Facebook Live has not worked well for you today, you can get, we'll be putting out, I think, on our webpage and probably on this Facebook page, links to that Zoom meeting so you can register. And of course, with Zoom, you can watch the video, probably see our folks talking at the same time they're showing their PowerPoint that way. And you can also just listen by good old-fashioned telephone if that works better. So the first in this series, and it's a different time from the other ones, is going to be April 15th, which is next Wednesday. That's going to be at 7 p.m. And that is coping with the COVID-19 crisis. Our fabulous team social worker, Caroline Hale, is going to be presenting, and she's going to be talking about the ways in which COVID-19 is impacting all of us and how to help cope with the impacts from that, more the emotional toll that it's taking on people. And although that's geared towards this current COVID-19 situation, it's a good listen for anybody who's been through and experienced any kind of disaster-related trauma. Then the next week, we're going to shift back to the legal topics. And on April 22nd at 4 p.m., which is the Wednesday after next, we will tell you everything you need to know to get ready for that rebuild program. And then on 4/29, which the next 2 are also Wednesdays at 4 p.m., we will talk specifically about ownership issues that may prevent people from accessing recovery funds. So an example of that would be if you have inherited your property and the family member who left it to you maybe died without a will, so you own it, you have an ownership interest, as do a couple other people in your family. How do you fix that so that you can access recovery funds if you don't have a deed or a will that clearly shows that you are the owner? And then the last topic we have planned in our series is May 6th, understanding your insurance coverage. And anybody who's ever made an insurance claims knows that that's not as easy as it seems, and you can't necessarily get there just by reading your policy. That's going to be a good session for anybody who maybe didn't get didn't get any money from their insurance company when they thought they should have. Or maybe you didn't get as much as you thought you should get, or you read your policy and it just seemed to mean something completely different when your insurance adjuster got on the phone with you than what you thought it meant when you signed on the dotted line. All right, thank you all so much for your time today, and we have some time for questions if anybody has any, and Emma has not answered them yet. Well, I'm not seeing anything come in. Oh, wait. All right, great. So hearing no questions, I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope you all will tune in next Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. to hear our social worker. Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.